Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to this morning study. We're going to continue looking at 2 Samuel chapter 3, though there are some other things I want to look at as well that don't directly relate to this. But anyway, before we begin, let's have a word of prayer. The dear Father in heaven, we invite your presence here in this new morning, the last morning study of this week. And we ask, Lord, that you can help us pull some of these things together, that we can understand what it is we have been studying and why. We know, Lord, that you have a purpose for each of us in our lives to play a part in the events that are happening around us, even if it is a significantly small part in the big scheme of things. We know, Lord, that everything matters. And so we just pray that we can represent you and that we can obey your voice and do your will. So we are thankful for each person that's here and those that watch these videos, and we just pray for wisdom and understanding. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay. I know yesterday we had, lots of little pieces of information, but not really being able to put things together. Now, before we look here, Stephen had sent me a message on Messenger. So I probably should go there first. Here, I'm going to do this. This is a spreadsheet that I made back in June 19th in 2020, so a while ago. Now, what this spreadsheet is it's entitled 18720. So what I did is I looked at all of the iterations of 18720, the symbols for July 18, 2020. In counting the days of Trump's life. So I'm going to start, obviously, when Trump is born as day one, right? So you can see there, June 14th, 1946, that's going to be, I guess that's day 0. Okay, however I counted that. And then I just have the dates. And what are these other dates here? Oh, that's Assad. Oh, that was why. So that's not that important. So we're going to have, I guess, the first one, I could probably get to 1872, right? So 187 doesn't count. It has to, and now the 0 would be at the front. 0, 187. I'll show you what I did here. It'd be 1, 1, 2, 7, 8. Yeah, there it is. So that's going to be number 1, right? So I have 1, 2, 7, 8. You can see that there. Maybe I can make this a bit bigger. I don't know how you make these things bigger. Okay, and then I have 1287, so that's going to be number 2, right? So I'm going to count all of these different iterations. Now, an interesting thing is when we go to 9/11, 2001, where's it here? Okay, it's easier to scroll like this. We're going to have the 47th iteration of the numbers 18720. They fall on 9/11. So is that interesting?
I thought so.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so Stevens sent me that. But I had done this back in 2020. And Stephen, I'd sent this to you, hadn't I?
Yeah, it is familiar. Just a kind of was on my radar, sort of trying to get in a wee bit. And I wasn't. I'd done a search on the things of the chats and stuff to see if it would be noticed before, and it wasn't coming up. So I just thought,
yeah, okay.
It did seem familiar.
Yeah. So, it's good you reminded me of it. Now, the other thing that I had noted back then, but I had completely forgot about, is when you go to 2025, and we go to the 70th iteration of those numbers, we have the date January 20th, 2025. As the 70th iteration of 18720. So we have the 47th iteration at 9/11, and we have the 70th iteration when Trump becomes the 47th. So I'd noticed this back in 2020, but of course I wasn't looking that far into the future as far as, the significance of Trump becoming the 47th president. So I don't know, what do people think about that? Is that significant? that we have the
Has to
70th.
be.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting that the 47th falls at 9/11, and then the 70th is at his inauguration.
Yeah, because probably back in 2020 we were looking at maybe Trump sort of continuing on, being the last president or whatever. We didn't see him being the 47th to connect
Yeah,
with.
well, what I thought is that would be, when the next president's going to be, right? So whoever the next one would be, because back in 2020, in June of 2020, I'm thinking, Trump's still going to be president, right? He's going to win the election. And so he would still just be the 45th. And then this would be the end of his presidency, right? But instead, he becomes the 47th there. But even back then, I noted it mentally, but I don't think I shared that with anyone or like did any presentations on it. I definitely did not do any presentations on it. I don't think I even shared it with anyone as far as I know. The only time I know is I shared this file with you not that long ago, like, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something, possibly. But I don't know if you had looked at that, the 70th iteration of those numbers, of those digits.
Probably
So,
not.
yeah, so the fact that they fall on January 20th, 2025, I think is pretty significant. Now, the interesting thing too, when I had put the dates of Trump here, so I'm going to continue on, but I stop at the 70th iteration, right? And you can see why, because I have like 2/8. Well, the next one's not going to be until like I have like a 7 at the, well, I guess it'd be a 7 at the beginning, right? So that's going to be way beyond. So obviously in Trump's life, it can't go beyond the 70th iteration of those numbers. So this one ends on, this one ends on January 1st, 2026. The other file I had, let me see here. For some reason, okay, I had two different files. So 18720. Oops. So I had one called Trump. So I'm going to open that up because that one was just the original one, I guess I did. So that one I brought up to 2026. Okay, so this one. Okay, just hang on. So this file is pretty much the same. I think I got rid of the Assad part of it, which was that the Syrian president. Okay, so this one, I believe this one goes to, yeah. So this one ended. So this is the one I think I sent you. I don't know if I sent you the one that said Trump or the other one that didn't have Trump. But this one, notice the last date. That's just where I had gone up to, September 9th, 2025. So the next date would be September 10th, 2025, Charlie Kirk's assassination. So that's probably just a coincidence. But anyway, that's as far as I'd gone up to when I'd originally, I guess maybe not originally, but later on when I don't know why I did that. But anyway, that was a long time ago. Last time I edited this was, let me see, it probably will say file info. Last modified, well, that was in December 10th, 2024, the last time I modified it. So that was before Charlie Kirk was assassinated. So I thought, anyway, that's all pretty interesting. I did draw it out on a chart. Just share this here just so you can see it. So it has his birthday there. It has the number of days, 2178 days to 9/11. So that's the 47th iteration. I could probably put something that marks that. This 47. And then, now, of course, hindsight, it's 50-50, right? So, I mean, we could have used that. We could have taken this and used this as a way of predicting that Trump would become the 47th president. I didn't do that. Obviously, as I mentioned, I just thought that would be the end of his presidency originally. But I don't think we could have made a prediction using this, right? The way that some people, try to make predictions, I don't think is correct, because, if we went back to where we were before, It could just mean nothing. It could mean something. But now we can look back and we can see, well, that is significant, right? Okay. So any
Maybe,
questions about that? Yeah.
yeah, maybe the 70th iteration in January. So maybe harkening back to when he was first made president in
He was
2000.
70 when he was first president. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that symbol of the 70 tied to Trump, right? And the number 7 tied to him.
Yeah. So he would have been 78 years old, 7 months and 7th day, whatever,
Yeah.
when not
Yeah.
70th.
70 years, 7 months, and 7 days when he was first made president on January 20th, 2017, right? Is that, I think that's, so we had this 7 connected with him, which makes sense that he's the 7th of the kings. But back then, we just had him as the 5th of the kings. And we weren't even looking at the kings in Revelation 17. We were just paralleling them with the kings of Persia, right? So with Xerxes, who was the 5th king of Persia. So I would think this is significant, the 47 and the 70 being tied to these iterations of the days of Donald Trump's life, right? Okay, so I'm just gonna do this here, yeah. So that's just the cardinal day count, right? Is how we're doing it from his birth. Okay, just checking that because that's how the chart was, so that's correct. Okay, so that's kind of an aside in a sense, but usually things happen or the timing of us looking at something occurs at an important time, right? So one of the things that I did is I added up all the Hebrew numbers for the wives, the first 6 wives and the 6 sons by each of those wives together. So I added a total of it. For the Hebrew numbers for the wives, I got 12,949. And for the sons, I have 16,060. Together, that's 29,009. Now, if we count 29,009, how to do this, minus. That is, if we count from January 2025, and we count 299 days from Trump's inauguration, we come to this 20,009, which is, so I'm going to put it on here on this chart. So I guess I better go back to my chart again. So I'm just going to put this here because what do I mean when I say hindsight is 50-50? Everybody always says hindsight is 20/20, but I always say hindsight is 50-50. I've been asked the question. That is, people think, if you go back, if I would have done this differently, then I would have predicted this or thought this differently or whatever it is, right? But actually, I say it's 50-50. Hindsight isn't 20/20. So that's just one of my little, where I take I do basically a spin on a saying, like instead of saying where the pavement meets the road or the rubber meets the road, I say that's where the pavement meets the road, things like that. So I do these little, I can't remember what you call that when you do that. You take a normal saying and you kind of turn it on its head, so to speak. Anyway, that's why I said hindsight's 50-50. I always say that because it's not quite 20/20, definitely. It's like half and half. Okay. Anyway, hopefully that helps. So this goes to November 15th, 2025. So obviously the 70th doesn't go there. So that would be the 299 days between those dates. So is there anything significant about November 15th as a symbol?
Just harkening back to when Jeff had said that the opposing tribe or faction had a week to repent from the 9th to the 15th of November in 2019.
Right. So that November 15th ended up being 20 days from when the Mayan calendar went to 1,872,000 days, right? And then you count 20 days from that, and it came to November 15th, 2019. That was
Well,
the
if you multiply 11 and 15, it comes to 165, don't it?
Yeah, but what's 165?
I don't know. That's right. I just multiplied it in my head, and it's 165. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. I'm not sure what 165 would mean. So this is 29009 days, which is the number of days. Now, so here we are, we're looking at this this chart using Trump's birthday. Okay, so normally we wouldn't count days from Trump's birthday, but when I added up the total of the Hebrew numbers, so the 166th prime is 977.977. Or is it 977? It's just 977. So 977 BC. Okay, so that's Stephen just saying the 165th prime is 977. So the rending of the kingdom is what he's going to refer to. So we know that that's going to be the prophecy of Josiah given on that date on November 22nd in that year on the Julian calendar. But okay, so we got November 15th, 2025. We can relate back to 2019. So that's going to be 6 years later to the day. But we're counting here from Trump's birthday. And we're doing that just simply because we were reminded of Trump's birthday by Stephen dealing with the 47th and the 70th. Now, of course, 299 days, 299 is not a symbol that I know of, but it would be the 300th day of Trump's presidency, right? So whether that means anything. So we're just putting that information there. We don't know what it means. Obviously, it's not November 15th yet, and we're not predicting an event in the future. So we would need to know that it's some kind of symbol of something. So I don't know. That's just what I'm doing. Just drawing these lines, putting them there so that we can get a picture of what that 290009 is. Now I mentioned that when I took the sons, so you got 6 sons by 6 different women that David's going to have while he's in Hebron. And that number was 16,060. Now, that happens to be 11 days less than 44 years. So the only thing that I could think of is just a personal thing. So on 2 days ago, my brother David, who has the same name as King David, his firstborn son was Daniel. And Daniel was born on September 30th, 1980, right? And then I'm going to have my firstborn son, Matthew Alexander Theodore, Matt for short, that's his initials. He's going to be born on September 19th, 1981. Now, if you count from September 19th, 1981, 16,060 days, you come to September 30th, 2025. So that means it's 44 years, but we're counting not from Matt's 44th, like Matt turned 44 on September 30th, but we would be counting from Daniel's first birthday. So it's kind of just, for me, it's interesting. I don't know if it has any significance prophetically or, was part of these numbers. It's just my brother David's firstborn son and my firstborn son, the relationship between Daniel's first birthday and my son's 44th birthday is exactly 16,060 days. And we just passed Daniel's. So let me see how we do that. So we just passed Matt's and Daniel's birthdays. So that would go from September 30th, 1981, when Matt's 11 days old, to Matt turning 44 on September 19th, 2025, right? So we have the 11 days, and if we put it into like a mirror structure, you would have 11 days from when Matt's born to Daniel's first birthday. And so we've had all these 1s and 11s, right, in connection with what we're doing. And then we would go to Matt's 44th birthday and count 11 days to Daniel's 45th birthday. So you got 11 days on each end, obviously, just how it's structured with the 16,060 in between. I don't know. Does anybody think that that's significant or important, or just a strange anomaly between my brother David's son and my son Matt? What do people think about that? Because we're dealing with sons, we're dealing with David's sons, and we talk about his firstborn. So that made me think of my brother David's firstborn, Daniel. And the word firstborn is 1060. So it has the digits of 16060. So that's kind of interesting in and of itself. Any thoughts about that? Is it significant, insignificant, just some coincidence? Doesn't really matter? Doesn't relate to anything, or does? Any thoughts? No thoughts? Nobody has any thoughts about it? Okay, so we just leave it there. You know, you're not going to do anything with that. But then we take from Trump's, so let's look at this thing from Trump's birthday. We have this November 15th, as we said, it has been a symbol connected to the 2520 days. We also note that in 1798, we have 46 days to the Pope being taken captive. So from January 1st in 1798 to February 16th February 15th in 1798, there's going to be 46 days. And if you count to the end of the year, November 15th is 46 days to the end of the year, right? I had a chart dealing with that. I don't know if people understand what I'm talking about, but November 15th, let's go here. Oops, I typed in the wrong keyboard. Doesn't help. There you go. Okay, got lots of November 15th. Yeah, here it is. So if we go February 15th, there's 273 days to November 15th in 1798, and then 46 days on either side. So there's just something I noted. And then if we go to Samuel Snow's letters, I'm counting 46 days, but that's going to be a cardinal count. This is an inclusive count. So that's really the 46th day. Because what we have here is we're going to have a leap year this year. We don't have a leap year in 1798. And so that's why there's 273 days and then November 15th. So that's just something that I noted about November 15th in the past. So what would November 15th in this context symbolize? I guess is the question. So we have it connected to the 2520 days of the Mayan calendar, that period of 1 week inclusive from November 9th, right, the 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th. So the 7 days that Jeff said that the group had to repent, the Omega. And here I had it in connection with this structure from February 15th, the 273 days, the symbol of the Levites, to November 15th. So what would it symbolize is just simply the question. So we're taking the Hebrew numbers of the wives and the sons born to David while in Hebron. And if we count it from Trump's birthday, we get November 15th, 2025. Is it significant as a symbol? I mean, it's rather involved sort of calculation. And we're not predicting an event on November 15th, 2025. We're just saying that we have this symbol produced. And what is this symbol?
Something to do with the true and false priests, I think.
Okay. Yeah, the true and false priests, because you're connecting it with the November 15th, 2019. What about here? So we got these 46 days and the 273 days.
Well, the Levites, the covenants, the keeping Sabbath in 1846, for example, for the whites.
Okay. So we got that 46 days, the 46 years is also mirrored in this.
Temple.
right? Because the 46 days, to me, it represented the 46 years. So it ties to the structures of the prophetic mirror, but we don't have the 19 days in there. But you understand what I'm saying. There is 46 years on either side. It's also 19 years on either side. But I just thought it was interesting here when I originally did this, just the date. I wasn't so much focused on November 15th, just on the 273 days, right? At the time when I did this chart. And I was also looking at Samuel Snow's letters and, February 16th, and then the Pope Pius VI being taken captive on February 15th. So I thought about those and the beginning of those 46 years and the end of the 46 years, right? 1798 and 1844. So I was thinking, well, maybe those days typified those years. Now, I'm trying to remember if November 15th had any significance in 1844. I think, I can't, because, it's after, obviously, October 22nd. But I can't remember if there was anything about that in particular. Okay, so anyways, just an observation regarding this. Just something to think about, a bit of information to put on the back burner. But I don't know if we can draw any solid conclusions about it. But that's what I did in adding up these numbers. So 12,949 for the Hebrew numbers from the wives, and which is roughly 35 years. I think it's 35 years and 189 days, if I remember correctly. And then, of course, 16,060, which is 44 times 365, or 11 times 1460, which is 1460 is 4 times 365. So one less than a leap year cycle on the Gregorian calendar. So those are the things I think about. It's how I try to sort through these different things, but whether that information is relevant or not. Now, so another thing that we addressed is that there is 6 wives here and 6 sons. And then we're going to have the 7th wife is going to be, where is it here? It's going to be earlier.
Yeah, brings has her brought back to David.
Yeah, where is that exactly? Yeah, here it is, verse 14. So David sent messengers to Ishbosheth, Saul's son, saying, "Deliver me my wife Michal," right, which I espoused. So we have 2 different symbols there. Michal being the number of days, that is the Hebrew number 4324, being the number of days from November 9th, 89 to 9/11. And then we have espoused, which is 187 backwards, so 781, right? So we know that in David sending messengers to Ishbosheth, and Ishbosheth being 365 plus 13, that is 378 is the Hebrew number. We take that into account, that it symbolizes 1 year and 13 days being 18720 minutes. So those are just the symbols that we have here. What they mean particularly, David sending to Ishbosheth, the man of shame, asking for his wife, which would be the 7th one if in these wives that are mentioned. Now, and Dwight has said before that David was espoused to Michal, but she wasn't really technically his wife, so he never ended up marrying her officially. Right? And so then when David flees, she's going to be given to Phaltiel, yeah, the son of Laish. Okay, so so we don't really even know what that means, because Phaltiel refers to, if I remember correctly, okay, the deliverance of God, from 2 different words, 6404 and 410, and where God delivers. So that's the word Pelet. So it's from 1046 and then 410, which is simply God, right? Strength, like the mighty God. So exactly what's happening here, what's being symbolized here, is there any suggestions? So this woman that that David was espoused to, which represents that first angel's message period, right? That period, what we call the first angel's message from its arrival to its empowerment. David was espoused to it, right, by Saul. So FFA supported David representing July 18, 2020, his espousal representing July 18. But he's never married, right? So at some point after the death of Saul, Ishbosheth is going to be requested by David. So that means Ishbosheth representing this man of shame, those that are embarrassed about July 18, 2020 or whatever. David's going to request from them to send Michal. So is that making sense to anyone about what this would mean? Is that, because in my own mind, it makes sense, though I don't think I have it all put together exactly. So any thoughts on that? And David's making this request when there's this league suggested by Abner that they have this league with David so that David can become king, right? But David says, I'm not going to, how does he put it? Okay, he said, well, I will make a league with thee, but one thing I require of thee, that is, thou shalt not see my face, except thou first shall bring Michal, Saul's daughter, when thou comest to see my face. So if we're going to apply this to our history, right, we're going to apply it to this movement, what would that be representing? David requesting of Ishbosheth that we're not going to have a league and you're not going to see my face unless you bring Michal, which represents the first angel's message. Are we able to put this together to make sense? How would you guys do it? You guys must be thinking. And then we have to figure out who Phaltiel is and what it means when he's went weeping behind her to Bahurim, and then Abner sends him back. Go return, and he returned. Does this represent anything that's happened in our movement, or is it something that has not yet happened? And then when we deal with God delivering Phaltiel, that's just related to Paltia, which is Jehovah delivers. Then we go to 6404, Pelet, deliverance, from 6403. To escape, save, deliver, slip away. Yeah, I thought that looked familiar. We had a form of it somewhere. Not this exact form, though. Okay, you guys are going to have to talk because I need some feedback.
Okay, to throw another spanner in the works.
Okay.
We've been addressing David as a message. We've been addressing
specifically July 18th and the leadership of Christ. So
right.
Christ, the transition from leadership of Saul or FFA to the leadership of David, which is Christ.
Does this not mean then symbolically Ishbosheth and Abner should also be messages?
Okay. Yeah, it can be.
Now, I ask for consideration that the message of Ishbosheth is turning aside from any message after 2012.
2012, we're going to put it all the way back. So you mean just when Jeff says that any light that came after 2012 is false light?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, because it's a man of shame. So those that are ashamed of July 18th being this 1 year, 365 days, and 13 days to be 378.
Right.
The meaning of the name Ishbosheth, and then the Hebrew number relating to 13 days, which we know relates to July 18, 2020, plus 365, which
right.
is really time, right? So the rejection of time and of July 18, 2020 because of shame. So it is a message connected to that, you're saying. I mean, obviously we have people connected to messages and messages connected to people.
Right.
But, yeah. Okay, go on.
Then is Abner equated with the message that Daniel Fontenot has been giving?
Okay, now explain more specifically what his message is and why you would connect Abner to it, because I think I know what you mean, but go on.
Well, the situation with this is that Daniel has been basically what his attitude seems to be that we have not presented very simple portions of this message, and that we need to do so without any tie-in for dates, numbers, or symbols.
Yeah, the other thing I think about with Daniel Fontenot's focus, his focus is always on the papacy, right?
Right. Correct.
I mean, it's just he doesn't focus much upon the United States,
Right.
Protestantism, and the second beast of Revelation 13. He focuses upon the first beast of Revelation 13. Now, I'm never sure why he does that, why he sort of almost discounts, and of course he does refer to it, right? Because he believes the United, but to him it's always about the papacy bringing in the Sunday law, never about the Protestants in the United States bringing in the Sunday law. And would people agree with me that that would be Daniel Fontenot's focus in those that have watched his videos?
Yeah, from what I've seen of them.
Yeah. And I've always wondered why there's that focus. Some people focus a lot on the United States. There are some people who focus a lot upon the dragon power, the UN, and the different conspiracies related to like WEF and things like that. That becomes their focus of who they see the enemy as, so to speak, where we need to be watching. So there are different emphases, but we know that all of them are correct because there's the dragon, beast, and the false prophet. There isn't just the beast, there isn't just the false prophet, there isn't just the dragon. These three powers all have a part to play in what happens in the closing scenes of Earth's history. So when I look, if you're going to say that Abner has to relate to that message, that would be a message that I would kind of place as the way that Adventists generally looked at things in the past. So that is, and I'm not talking about like Millerite history, I'm talking about, the 90s and the 80s, right? That sort of focus on how he sees the Sunday law coming about. He doesn't like any of this newfangled stuff.
Correct.
Yeah, okay, yeah, because that's the way that I've seen Daniel Fontenot as far as all of my interactions with him. And I'm not saying it's bad, like, I understand it, that all of this sort of new information that we have, to him it's just confusing, right? And he's seen how it's misused and gone in different directions. And so for him, the safe way is just to go back to what we used to understand without any of this new light having significance. That basically, just characterizes it as abstract theology, right? It's not as concrete as he would like. The other way is simpler, more straightforward. The Catholic Church is just, the Antichrist, and they're going to, make a league with the United States and bring in the Sunday law. And it's really about, looking at what the Pope's doing, and that's maybe a bit of a simplification of his message. Obviously, it's not all the details. But when you look at what he's written, what he's done in presentations, that seems to me to be the way that we would look at it. So you're saying Abner is supportive of Ishbosheth, but then what does it mean that Abner becomes dissatisfied? So Abner's going to be falsely accused. So we do have, at a certain point, we have in our history, just personally, that Daniel Fontenot is going to be attacked by FFA, but that's earlier on. I'm not sure what his relationship is with Jeff now and what's happening in the movement. Is Daniel Fontenot still doing his regular videos now that Jeff is back? I haven't even paid attention in the last while. I know I see videos showing up on my YouTube from Daniel Fontenot, but does anybody know if he's like regularly making videos or are these just old ones? Because I noticed he has a lot of sensationalized titles on his videos.
I haven't paid as much attention to what he's currently doing as I had in the past. Now,
yeah, so I'm not sure, are these all just like new series of videos he's doing? I don't know about his relationship with Jeff, how that's going, or with FFA, or with the American group. I don't know if he's doing presentations on the American group studies still, or whether he's just doing independent presentations. All I know is I see his videos showing up, and they're very sensationalized, and they still seem to be on the same topics that he was doing in the past. Okay, Dwight, comments on that?
So the question that I have here, if this indeed was the case, can we then compare Daniel Fontenot's messages as an example of Abner being the point of Abner's slaying of Asahel, with Asahel's message being that of Colin?
Okay, well, that could be. Now, what do we do, though, with Abner seeking to have this league with David?
Well,
okay, so Stephen says Daniel posted a video 8 days ago. So he's, yeah. Is he just posting independent videos, though? Are these on his own, or are these videos from, like, I haven't paid much attention to his relationship with Jeff. Now, so if we were going to say Abner represents, Daniel Fontenot, just directly, I mean, would there become, so those are his own, Stephen says, would there become a point where he becomes disaffected with Jeff and then starts to look in a different direction, to have a league with the past understanding of July 18th or something? I don't know, right? What's going to happen. But yeah, so Asahel representing the message of Colin. But then we know that Abner's going to be killed by
Joab.
Yeah, Joab. Yeah.
Now, see,
the name I had in my head, it just didn't sound right. Okay, Joab. Yeah. Okay, go on.
All of this, with Asahel, Abner, and Joab has stuck in my mind for a long time, because 24 years ago, about, when I was coming back to the Adventist church and finding it had changed very dramatically, there was a pastor that had presented the example of Abner and this with Asahel and Joab as being an amazing example of forgiveness. And I stood up to that pastor and I said, I don't see how you are coming to this conclusion. This does not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I had not studied that much, but what he was saying just did not make sense. And when I said this to him face to face, it resulted in him making a call to my phone on a day where I was absolutely slammed with work. And he left me a 30-minute voice message, how as a student of Greek and Hebrew, he could see that this example was the most amazing example of forgiveness he'd ever seen in the Bible. And later it came out that this same pastor had conference approval to hold a membership in a sermon service. And it was likely that this had come as one of the sermons in the service that had come from other people and not from his own study of the Bible.
Okay.
So whenever
so what was his reasoning, though, that this was an example of forgiveness?
His entire reasoning was that this was showing how forgiveness was so very important, that this story of Abner and Asahel, and then later with this with Joab, all together tied into to showing us that the forgiveness that was being shown was so important for us. And I'm going, how can you say that forgiveness?
But how does he see forgiveness being shown? That's what I'm not understanding.
That's what I didn't understand either.
Okay, but he didn't explain why it was an example.
No,
Said,
he wanted to say, basically that, these things become revealed by the experts in these languages.
okay. Yeah, well, anyway, yeah, this doesn't make sense. Okay, so I think that we need to connect these to messages. So if we take Abner's as a message, it's a message, in my view of understanding, relating to the role of the papacy in last day events. Because that's, if we're going to connect it to Daniel Fontenot's message, that's what I would connect it to. So here we have Asahel. So we're saying that Asahel represents what message specifically?
Well, Colin's message regarding this with Trump, regarding with what he was trying to present on
So the riddle.
the
riddle?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then if we take that Abner represents the message regarding the papacy, then that is Colin's message regarding the riddle is defeated by the message regarding the papacy when we get a new pope elected.
Okay.
So that undoes the riddle, so to speak.
Right.
But then that means Abner is going to seek this league. So it's a message that is, there's a reconciliation within these messages, an understanding that brings these different messages together. But in order for that to happen, David says, that is July 18th, says to the message dealing with the papacy, that you also need to bring in the first angel's message, or we can't really have a league.
I could agree with that.
Okay. Yeah, so that makes more sense. I mean, I have a hard time like trying to say these are people who are making these decisions, because then, that's dependent on people as individuals doing things, where if we just say that there's a message attached to them or a specific message, that Abner represents that part of the message within the movement. Now, when we go back to the website that we were supposed to do in 2020 for July 18th. So we ended up doing a different website. Jeff ended up writing the website. But initially, we had all of these different authors, Daniel Fontenot being one of them, writing articles, which I then edited it into the same format, even though I gave them specifically a format that I wanted them to write in. Nobody wrote in the format that I sent to them, except maybe, I think one person did. Maybe Stephen did. I don't know. Somebody did. But they just did it all in their own format, so I had to go through and edit all these things. And I wanted them all as one web page where you just have a table of contents and you click on that and it'll bring you to the different articles, but they're all on the same page. It's the simplest way to have a YouTube page. They're the nicest to navigate. You don't have to keep going to opening up different pages. They're all on one page. Everything's there. But they didn't end up using my edited articles, right? And they were all good articles dealing with different topics. Daniel Fontenot is going to write about the papacy. Some different people wrote about Nashville and the Parthenon, and so different topics. Some on the Sunday law, some on more spiritual topics. They'll use that word spiritual in quotation marks, but not prophetic, but more related to righteousness by faith, I guess. So we had all of these articles, but there's going to be this sort of the rejection of, part of the thing that I look at that has been a problem within the movement is that all of these things that we understand as Seventh-day Adventists need to be brought together. That is, to understand the truth, we need the different minds, the different people, the different areas of study to come together to make a complete message. The idea, for instance, that, chronology is the only thing, and you need chronology, or prophecy is the only thing, or we just need righteousness by faith, or we just need to know about the Catholic Church, or we just need to know about the dragon power or whatever it is. Like people have different specialties and different areas of understanding, and they're all important, right? You can't neglect some area of study and say, well, it's not important. If it's in the Bible, it's important, right? The whole Bible. God doesn't say you just have part of the Bible. You don't say, well, the Old Testament isn't any good, or we're not going to read James because Paul and him had a disagreement about how to explain things, right? You understand what I'm saying? There's these different personalities, different messages, and that they need to come together, and they come together. This unity comes together because we're united in Christ. When people are always pulling in these different directions, on standing on their different soapboxes, it doesn't bring about any kind of unity. And especially when they're undermining and attacking each other personally, just because they fully understand what somebody else is presenting. And so I've never had the position, that somebody in the movement is my enemy because they don't understand some of the things that I understand, or I don't understand some of the things that they're presenting, that they're not maybe that important to me personally, or it's not an area of my study, because I realize that there's all kinds of people in God's church all over the world that God is leading in different ways, in different levels of understanding, different areas of understanding. And all of those things are important. So if we take that into account here, and we have Ishbosheth is going to take Michal, which is the first angel's message in our history, from her husband. Now, her husband is, we'll notice one thing is Ishbosheth is 378, and the word husband is 376. So that's 1 year and 11 days, right? So whether that's significant, and that's just Isha or Ish, right? Or Isha's wife. Isha is. So we got Ishbosheth, and then this is Ish, right? So her man went with her along, weeping behind her, to Bahurim. Bahurim is interesting because it means a young man's village, and it comes from 970, Bakur, which is the principal passive of 977. Now, in 977 BC, do we have young men mentioned?
Yeah.
Okay, so what happens in 977 BC with young men? What is that?
They wanted the sternness of Jeroboam, right?
Yeah, so they're going to give counsel to Rehoboam, right? So Rehoboam is who's the king after Solomon. He's Solomon's son who becomes king. And there's going to be the old men who give him counsel. So the old men are what?
The old paths.
Okay, the old paths, right? And then the young men going to give counsel. And Rehoboam's going to listen to the counsel of the young men. So the young men are going to say, you got to be tough, right? You can't, you got to show them who's boss, that you mean business. And of course, because of that, Israel rebels against Rehoboam, and Jeroboam ends up being the king. So the kingdom is taken away from Rehoboam and given to Jeroboam, at least northern Israel. So Rehoboam gets Judah and Benjamin, and then the 10 tribes go to Jeroboam, right, in 977. So we take this word Bahurim, even though it's 980, but we look at the numbers that connected to it, 970 and 977, and also that it means young man's village, that it means a message of the young men, right? So that means that the young men, so they're going to go to Bahurim. Now we know that this husband here is Phaltiel, son of Laish, right? So he's going to be the one that's weeping, and he's going to follow her to Bahurim, to the young man's village. And then Abner's going to say, return, and he's going to return. So shuv, and in Hebrew, right? So you got that word shuv, which means return. It says here shub, but I pronounce it modern Hebrew, shuv, right? So it's just the same word. It's doubled. Okay. So what does that mean? If we're going to have this young man's village, we're going to connect it to the council of the young men. Now, the young men, of course, in that history in 977 give a bad message, right? Bad counsel. So the village of the young men, or just dealing again. So it's a town in Benjamin between Jerusalem and Jericho, beyond the Mount of Olives, on the way to Jericho. That's the place where it is. 970 is where it. So if we look at this word, to choose, elect, decide for, is the word 977, bakur, right? And then 970, the youth, young man, right? So it's the participle passive of 977. So the word is bakur. It's pluralized as bakurim, the young men, rather than young man, right? And then it's given a name because it's a proper name. It's the village of the young men. Village isn't really part of the word, but it's a place. So it's obviously a place called young men, right? And that he's going to go along her, weeping behind her, along with her, till he gets to this village of the young men. And then Abner's going to tell him to return, and he's going to return. Okay. So what would this represent? So he's going to be mourning her until he gets to the village of the young men. So what is the village of the young men? What would that represent in our history? Remember, this has to do with
the young folks that thought the woke movement was so grand. You'll think
okay. So we could. So one of the things we saw in the movement, I remember being at the School of the Prophets, and some of the young people there talking about the boomers, right? Isn't that kind of what happened in 977?
Mm-hmm.
And Jeff did connect 977 with the separation that happened in the movement on November 9th, 2019, right? He connected it first with September 6th, or September 7th, pardon me, with the 9/7 there. And I can't remember all of his different ways in which he connected it, but he connected it with 977 BC, the worship of Jeroboam on the 15th day of the 8th month, the counterfeit, right? So he had sort of paralleled that with what was happening with Parminder's movement. So if we take that Mikal represents November 9th, 1989 to 9/11, then Bahurim might represent November 9th, 2019, possibly. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yep.
Okay. So it's just or that history there where we have that division between the Alpha and the Omega group, right? So maybe there's more from that we could glean, but for now, let's just look on. Abner had communication with the elders of Israel, saying, "Ye sought for David in times past to be king over you. Now then do it, for the Lord hath spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines and out of the hand of all their enemies." Now, if we go back to the Philistines, we know that that's the methodology that we categorize as Protestant methodology that Parminder's movement was using. So whatever this is, whether this is referring to something back in the past or just a continuation of something in regarding to the separation from the strange wives, we can even put that symbolism in there that we had from the end of Collins' study to April 5th, 2030 as a symbol, right? Just that there's this period of time, divorcement from the strange wives, the 88 months. So that maybe this is, ye sought for David in times past to be king over you. Now then do it. For the Lord has spoken of David, saying, By the hand of my servant David, I will save my people Israel out of the hand of the Philistines and out of the hand of all their enemies. So we need now to recognize the leadership of Christ and how that was manifested in understanding July 18, 2020. And that this comes about in our history in a specific way. So exactly how this story is illustrating the present, I don't know all the details, but in some ways it's representing our history. So how that is going to be, where we're going to place it on a line specifically, I don't know. But we can go back when we look at what this chapter is giving us. It is giving us information regarding our time, right? With these wives and the sons. And now we got this seventh one, right? Mikal, which is that first angel's message. Something that was espoused to David, someone that was espoused to David, but David hadn't actually taken her as his wife yet. So she's going to end up being the seventh. So Abner also spoke in the ears of Benjamin, and Abner went also to speak in the ears of David in Hebron, all that seemed good to Israel, and that seemed good to the whole house of Benjamin. So Abner came to David to Hebron, and 20 men with him, and David made Abner and the men that were with him a feast. And Abner said unto David, I will arise and go, and will gather all Israel unto the Lord my king, that they may make a league with thee, and that thou mayest reign over all that thine heart desireth. And David sent Abner away, and he went in peace. So remember, Abner's going to make this plea to David and to the different tribes, and David's going to, in the result, he's going to become king over all Israel. But we know that Joab wasn't there, right? So behold, the servants of David and Joab came from pursuing a troop. So they were pursuing a troop. So they're involved in some kind of band, like that troop is a band, a military band, not like a musical band, but a group, right? A camp or whatever. And brought a great spoil with them. But Abner was not with David in Hebron, for he had sent him away, and he was gone in peace. So after Abner had left, Joab's going to come back. He's going to find out that Abner had been there when Joab and all the hosts that were with him were come. They told Joab, saying, Abner the son of Ner came to the king, and he hath sent him away, and he is gone in peace. Now, it doesn't say here if that Joab would know, what was discussed. They don't tell us that, but I assume that there must be something that he believed that was discussed. But he believes that Abner is going to deceive David in some way, that it's some kind of plot. So he has suspicion. He's a bit paranoid about Abner. Then Joab came to the king and said, What hast thou done? Behold, Abner came unto thee. Why is it that thou hast sent him away, and he is quite gone? And thou knowest Abner the son of Ner, that he came to deceive thee, and to know thy going out and thy coming in, and to know all that thou doest. And when Joab was come out from David, he sent messengers after Abner, which brought him again from the well of Sirah, but David knew it not. So the well of Sirah means the turning. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Because we would, so maybe this turning point, September 10th, 2025, comes from the word sir, which means to turn, to bring, call back, decline. Okay, so that's interesting. So we're going to have to keep that in mind. We only got like 5 minutes left today, so on Sunday we'll come back to some of this. So we called him from the well of Sirah, so he's going to turn back from there. But David knew it not. And when Abner was returned, that's the word shuv, to Hebron, Joab took him aside in the gate to speak with him quietly, and smote, and there we have again that 5221, which backwards is December 25th, him there under the fifth rib. And we noted that the fifth is that symbol for the week of Christ, the literal number of days in the week of Christ, 2520 plus 50, 2570, that he died for the blood of Asahel, his brother. And afterward, when David heard it, he said, I and my kingdom are guiltless before the Lord forever, from the blood of Abner the son of Ner. Let it rest on the head of Joab and on all his father's house, and let there not fail from the house of Joab one that hath an issue, or that is a leper, or that leaneth on a staff, or that falleth on the sword, or that lacketh bread. Now, I'm going to stick my neck out here a bit. Now, I say that Joab, in this sort of paranoid kind of state that he's in about being deceived, that David's going to be deceived, that this relates to those who are really involved in conspiracy theories. So it'd be this conspiracy theory message. So that's my opinion. And that there's also this jealousy that's there. So whether I'm correct or not, you have to decide. But that's how I would look at the message of Joab. And that Joab, people who were supporting conspiracy theories were also supporting July 18th. So there's sort of this curse that's given to the descendants of Joab, right? But Joab and Abishai, his brother, slew Abner because he had slain their brother Asahel at Gibeon in the battle. Okay, any final thoughts before we close with prayer? I know there's a lot of information today. We went through Trump's birthday and lots of different symbols relating to the wives and the sons, and trying to put this together as a picture of what's happening in the movement. But when we come to this on Sunday, hopefully we spent a bit of time looking at it in more detail. But we can see how it's coming together. Every time we go through these stories, we bring things together. So any final thoughts?
There had been a comment that I made yesterday for which I need to apologize. One of the things that we were addressing cursorily, we know that from the book of Luke and the book of Matthew that we have the genealogies of Mary and of Joseph.
Yeah.
Mary and Joseph, in their genealogy, were closer as cousins because they are both descended from specific sons of David.
Mm-hmm.
And I found it interesting when I looked at this, and I'm going to try to do something more in depth, but the sons of David from which they both descended were both sons of Bathsheba.
Okay. So both sons of Bathsheba.
So it's also interesting to note that there was a name change because when Solomon was born, his name was originally Jedediah, and he became Solomon.
Yeah. When did he become Solomon?
I haven't finished that part yet, so I can't give you an answer.
Yeah, because I never knew that. That's
So we have the example there of a covenant with the name change. I find it very intriguing.
Yeah, and his name would actually be Shlomo, not Solomon, but
right.
It somehow became Solomon in English.
Okay.
But in Hebrew, it's Shlomo.
Okay.
Anyway, so yeah, well, I didn't think something you need to apologize about, but
well, I thought it was from Abigail and Bathsheba, and when it turned out to be both from Bathsheba, I just found it very interesting.
Yeah, so it's a correction. It's not like some sin.
Okay.
Yeah, we're often mistaken about things, but anyway, okay. So let's close in prayer. Dear Father in heaven, thank you again for this day, for the blessings that we have had in studying together, the things that we can learn, the fellowship that we can have with one another through your Spirit. And we just ask that you can be with the studies tomorrow evening and Sabbath, and that you can bring us together again on Sunday morning to continue this study. Bless each person. May your angels watch over them. And may you guide and direct our steps. We pray in Jesus' name. Amen.